Welcome to our Tag Marshal expert session. My name is Bodo Sieber, the Tag Marshal CEO, and our session today is how Oakmont Country Club creates exceptional player experiences for their members while increasing operational efficiency. And I have two very esteemed guests with me. Devin is the PGA Head Pro at Oakmont Country Club, and Garrett Rodgers, the Senior Assistant Golf Pro. Gents, welcome, and thank you so much for making some time for us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Bodo. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I also have Bill Carroll, who's the Tag Marshal Northeast rep, a couple of miles away from Oakmont up in beautiful Massachusetts. Bill, how are you?
Thanks for having me, Bodo. Another great day in the Berkshires.
Nice one. Okay, gents, let's tee things off. Let's talk about your favorite subject. Tell us about Oakmont Country Club. Not that it needs much introduction, especially looking at these photos of the hallowed bunker row. Please give us a quick intro, Devin, if you would, and then also just how did you get to where you are now in terms of your time in the golf business?
Sure. Thanks, Bodo. So just a quick overview of Oakmont. I guess most recently, you look at these pictures here on the screen. Those are from the 2016 U.S. Open, which Dustin Johnson won. And most recently, we hosted the U.S. Amateur this year, which James Pyatt won. It was a great event and our 20th major championship. So Oakmont has a long-standing history, both, especially with the USGA, but with the PGA as well. We hosted 3 PGA championships, and we are excited. We announced as well that we're going to be hosting those USGA championships for the next 30 years, all the way out to 2049. So that was a really exciting announcement for the club. And I think if you look back at history, Oakmont has always been an anchor site, but it's nice to have that on paper and planned. So we're excited. There are a lot of exciting projects that are going to happen here at the club over the next 10 years in particular, in preparation for a lot of these championships. But that really is a big part of the culture here at Oakmont. The course was originally built to be the hardest test in golf and host those major championships when our founder built it in 1903. And we're very proud to carry on that tradition. And just to talk a little bit about my start here at Oakmont, I began in 2006. I started here as an intern, working for Bob Ford and worked for Bob for 11 years. And as an assistant, and I would go between Pittsburgh and Seminole. I did that for 4 winters after school, and was sort of the lucky one standing when he decided to retire at the end of 2016. So I officially took over his role January 1st, 2017, and I'm now completing my 5th season in this role. And it's hard to believe I've almost been here half my life, but I guess when you start somewhere when you're 19 and you've been here now for 16 years, that's what happens. You get older. So very fortunate. We've got an incredible team here. You're going to hear from Garrett. And another tradition that really began with Lou Worsham, who was Bob's boss, was our assistant professionals moving on to head professional jobs in the industry. And we've continued that tradition. We've had several guys move on to head professional roles over the past few years, and no doubt that Garrett and Ryan Tracy, who's not on the call, but our other lead assistant, will be in those roles in the coming years.
Thank you, Devin. Not a bad stepping stone, and I see Bob Ford bowed out just after the US Open. They nicely played, Tim.
Yeah.
Garrett, why don't you do a quick intro to yourself?
Sure. So I graduated I went to Methodist University in North Carolina there in Fayetteville. Graduated in 2015. After college, I went to Wingfoot Golf Club, spent 3 years at Wingfoot, and came aboard Oakmont, the Oakmont team in 2018. and been here ever since. In the winter time, for a time there, I went down to the Ocean Reef Club down in Key Largo, Florida, and now I've been fortunate enough to be at Oakmont year round. This will be my second year here, and 4 years in total. So I've been very lucky to be a part of Devin's staff and the team here at Oakmont.
Nice, thank you. Tell us a little bit about the number of rounds you do, how do people get around. Tell us a bit about your membership and what does one have to do to get to play at Oakmont.
Well, like everyone after COVID, we're busy. We'll do about 25,000 rounds in a 6-month period, 7-month period, which used to be a lot. Now it's sort of average when you start to talk to other courses and other golf professionals. But it's a really busy place, and I would say over the past 10 years, pace of play has been a big part of our culture here, and I know we're going to get a little bit into that as we go on here, Bodo. But it continues to be, and that culture piece has only grown. But it's a very active club. We have our famous SWAT here, which is our member game. We play it 3 times a week: Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday. And we have several other groups. We have a net SWAT, we have a lady SWAT. So very active membership. And you know, as you can imagine, a lot of people want to play Oakmont. So we all know how small the golf world is. There's always a connection with someone, and our members enjoy hosting people here, which accounts for a lot of our rounds and keeps us very busy. But that's really what our makeup is. You know, very strong active membership, playing member games, and then a lot of hosting. So that would be a typical day at Oakmont.
Nice, brilliant. Okay, yeah, you mentioned pace of play and your on-course service and on-course management. So that's what we want to talk about. Bill, I know you've made notes now because you want to play at Oakmont for sure. Let me do a quick introduction to Tag Marshal for those of the webinar guests who don't know about us. We now work with 350 clubs. Tag Marshal is an on-course optimization system. So we manage anything on course with a particular focus on the course traffic. We have tracked way over 20 million rounds. Time to update the slide. And we are proud partners to some of the really very best clubs. Obviously, Oakmont's one of them, but also in the private club space, there's Hazeltine, there's Valhalla, Eastlake are what, 40 minutes from our office in Atlanta. In the daily fee space, we recently watched Whistling Straits host the beautiful Ryder Cup. Then we watched Phil Mickelson dominate the Ocean course at the PGA Champs. Obviously, Pebble Beach, one of the household names. Bandon Dunes, what a phenomenal place. So we're very fortunate working with some of these setups, but even more fortunate working with their managers because they're the ones who teach us how to make our system better. And we're very fortunate to working with them, keeping a close eye on the ground. Most of our clubs are really middle of the road clubs, and they have the same ambitions in terms of providing the best possible play experience, working efficiently, and also driving revenue wherever possible. So there's lots to learn from these top clubs, and we're grateful that we get to pass on a lot of these learnings. Among those, obviously, within this webinar space that we've hosted quite a few of. So what we want to talk about today are just a few points, and I know that Devin and Garrett have got great thoughts on these. To get started, let's look at a little bit of research on the key experience factors that matter to golfers, because if you want to serve golfers well, we need to know what matters. But before we do that, I need to launch a poll, and I need to ask Devin first up a question in terms of if you were to pick 3 experience factors for yourself as a player, but also given your time that you've worked in golf, out of this list, starting at course design, ending at cost and value, what would you say for you are the 3 top ones? And I'm going to launch a poll to ask our guests as well. Devin?
So I'm gonna type it in here as well, but playing partners, number 1. I can't seem to hit it. Maybe I'm not allowed. But
you can just talk to it.
playing partners number one, pace and flow of play definitely number two, and I would say course design number three.
That's yeah, no surprises. Garrett, for you?
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I'd say playing partners would be my first, pace of play, and I would say course conditioning would be my third.
Yeah, conditioning does tend to float to the top, and yeah, just looking at the photos from Oakmont is no exception here, right? And the effort that you're putting in. Interesting. So our guests here, you can't see the poll, I can, but pace of play has come out tops and course conditioning alongside. Interestingly enough, those are certainly the top three as far as the broader USGA research goes, and they're stating course conditioning is at 84% of 20,000 or so respondents. So our webinar guests are in line with that. And then pace of play is very close to that. I believe 76% of players saying that's critical to them. And then in between, obviously, there's, like you said, who's in my playing group, can be fantastic, can be awkward. And we get to spend 4 hours or even longer with our playing partners. So it is important. Let me just quickly share so you can see how you have voted. So like we said, course conditioning top, flow of play, pace of play also. And then who's in my group, my playing partners coming in at number 3. No surprises. In terms of the research, obviously, those are only 6 or 7 examples of what matters, but we know they do count. So the USGA has conducted some major research into this because one of their mandates to the industry is to improve player satisfaction. And that comes from a pre-COVID time, but it is relevant still, and maybe even more so because now it's busier on the golf courses, like you've just mentioned. And they wanted to grade what really matters to golfers and what delights them and what frustrates them, so that the people that they represent, which is obviously 25 million or so amateur golfers, but also the clubs, can serve those people better, right? So the player experience measure revolves around engage, meaning making a decision to go play. That might include a phone call or booking online, arriving at the clubhouse, playing the round, exiting, which includes in their logic, restaurant, grill, anything post-round, and then extend is anything that happens between finishing the round and the next round, right? So how we would adjust this little graph is we would make golf much bigger because it really is where most of the time gets spent. It's the core driver of this whole cycle. And it's what drives the bus in terms of we can really delight people with it, and hopefully we do, but sometimes we're not getting it right, and we need to get it right more often than not. Just to briefly conclude, so this research was done by Professor Christina Schoonover and her colleague Eric Bray from the University of Wisconsin. Now, Chris Schoonover is also heavily involved at Erin Hills Golf Club, another US Open host. So we've been working very closely with them, also supporting them with data. So what they found is that the overall top frustrator out of 1,000 touch points in the golfer journey are corrective pace of play actions, meaning somebody comes over and says, you're slow, get on with it. But equally as frustrating is other people's speed. So if other people hold me up, I'm equally as frustrated. So that's a bit of a conundrum. On the other hand, the most rewarding experience, and that's really surprising because everybody would have thought conditioning surely, or like a fantastic course design. No, but positive ranger etiquette gets a top score in terms of delighting people. And that's probably because it's quite unexpected in the standard way of how rangering and marshalling has been designed in the past. So as far as Oakmont is concerned, you have obviously identified flow of play as something that's of importance to your members and something that you want to do as well as you possibly can. How and when did you start to really pay attention to that, just historically speaking, before there was any technology in play?
Yeah, so I you know, like I said, I've been here for 16 seasons, so I've seen the culture and importance sort of evolve over that time. And I would tell you, you go back 10 or 12 years ago, we talked about pace of play. We would track pace of play in terms of, when someone teed off, when they turned, when they finished, and would intervene when cases were extreme. And I would say we've evolved all the way from that to where we are today, where we discuss pace of play in pretty much every communication that goes out from our golf committee, from the golf shop, and every chance we get. And from that point, we're very proactive about it. We obviously keep track of time, and using Tag Marshal, we have a full-time ranger. We call it a ranger out there, and it's generally one of our assistant professionals. And our members know that they're going to be out there. And we actually use a lot of times we'll use one of the passenger carts or 6-seater carts, so it's visible. There's presence out there, and our members know that if that cart is out there to offer you a ride, it's not a suggestion. We're there to help and try to move people back into position. So we've come a long way, really, just in terms of looking back. We're reactive. When someone was really slow, you'd send a slow play letter, and it didn't really change what happened during that day, because as we all know, in this world, in this industry, all it takes is one group to ruin the entire day. And you send a letter, well, there's nothing you can do about that day. So where we are right now, where when a group's on number 2 or number 3, and we see that they're 2 or 3 minutes behind, one of our assistants is out there letting that group know where they stand, and we need them to move back into position. And really, Tag Marshal has allowed us to do that. Our membership knows that we're using technology to tell us where they are relative to pace of play. Because if we didn't have that, and you went up to a group and said, hey, you're 2 or 3 minutes behind, they'd probably look at you like you had 3 heads, right? Like, how would you know that?
Sure.
But they know we're actually looking at a system that tells us that.
So you already, is it fair to say that it was one of your top priorities for quite a while?
It was. I mean, if you were to look at Oakmont from a big picture standpoint, clearly golf course conditioning is, what our top priority is, like anywhere, right? But after that, it is definitely our pace of play, given just how busy we are. And the other part that I know a lot of people on this call can relate to, like, when you make it a priority, right? Well, then it becomes a priority to everyone else at the club. So it's not only our priority internally, but everyone that's on that golf course today, they recognize it as a priority, and when it doesn't meet the standard, they're not satisfied. So it's our job to ensure that level of pace is maintained.
Yeah, I think the key understanding is probably how easy it is. Like, yes, it does take effort and process and awareness, but how easy it is to make such a big difference, like to your day to day, if you pay attention. And if you don't do that, you're actually probably spending more time just fixing problems out there, right? Instead of, your attitude is being proactive, and you've really created over the last few years a very successful culture around it. If you don't mind, just taking a quick look at the tech that helps you do that. So at Oakmont, you're walking golf, caddies, very long tradition with that. So you are taking, your players get tracked with one of these mobile units. Obviously, there are a lot of cart-based clubs out there. They, in this case, would have one of these installed. But what these units do is they send data to our system, and then the system presents the data back to management. Devin and his team at Oakmont, they have a tablet out when they go out. Garrett's going to talk to that a little bit just now. But obviously, if you've got a screen-based system, then that information feeds straight back to the players so they can be made aware of it. And it's just basically the Waze or Google Maps of golf course traffic management, if you will. So once you have the information, you can do that live line of sight management, but also the data backend power that you can unlock, really understanding what's happening at your course, makes a big difference to the experience, and it makes a big difference to efficiency. So So this is really something where technology can help immensely compared to how we had to do things 10, 20 years ago. Garrett, maybe passing on to you. This is sort of what you'd look at in your day-to-day, I guess, right? And when you and or some of the team are out on the course, how do you approach this, and how do you use this information? And this is Oakmont. This is obviously not a real set of rounds, but we just wanted to show what things look like for you.
Yeah. So when I would go out to Ranger, obviously I'd either have a tablet with me or my phone, log into the Tag Marshal, and I would look closely at that map. And as you can see, tag 17 is in the red there, so they're a little slow. So I would use that. Obviously, they're my first priority. I would give them rides or speak to them to get them back into position. And I would also communicate it with the group. I would have that tablet in my hand, and I would show them, like goes back to what Devin said, if somebody was 3 minutes behind, it's hard to, show them that without a tablet. So I would show them, and they get it. They understand, we have the technology, and they can see it for themselves that they're a little bit behind and need to pick it up. And, when I'm out there rangering, I can see, all across the course with that tablet. And if somebody's, getting slow there on going up 3, I can jump from 12 there and go over across the road there to 3 and speak with them. And it just makes it so much easier. Without that technology, you wouldn't be able to tell, that quickly who is going to be a problem out on the golf course.
For sure. So 3 minutes is your threshold that you look to work towards. And I know it sounds so insignificant, right? In a 4-hour round, would 3 minutes matter? But if you're not on top of it and 3 minutes turns to 10, then 15 groups behind that get impacted. Well, now it matters, right? So is this where you found that being proactive has made a difference to the experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the sooner you can, speak to a group, the better the day is going to go, especially this time of year, even, we're battling daylight. So, we need to get out there and ranger and use this technology as best we can. And the sooner we do it, the better the day is going to go. The group's teeing off at 2:30, 3 o'clock. We want to make sure that they can get their whole round in. So, this is extremely important, definitely.
There's player names on the sidebar here. You have a T-sheet that's integrated. Which T-sheet do you guys use, and how do you use that information, knowing that who you're going to approach ahead of time?
Yeah, so we use 4 tees. So we have a starter on the first tee there. He records the start times, and he'll either text them to the ranger, or a member of the golf shop will come up and take a picture of that tee sheet, and we'll plug in the names in the shop there, and so the ranger is out there and knows which group is slow, and we know who they are. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, I think one of the underlying benefits of having that name assigning and that integration is that you can also build player profiles over the course of a season, even multiple seasons, right? So if you need to assist players, maybe be more mindful, or maybe consider different start times, and that data all helps. So in terms of the member experience, I think you, in one of our initial conversations, you mentioned that, which I found quite sticky, you can never get the time back waiting, right? Devin, that's something that you said. How do you use this in making sure that there's that awareness around, hey, this is important to us every day? This is one of those analogies, but how do you make sure that your members are buying into what you're doing for them and to their benefit? What's that conversation been like, and how did you get that culture moving forward?
So just constant communication and hopefully education. And as you mentioned there, that really 2 things. The question you have here, what is like on pace? Like what is in position? And the way we describe that internally, and hopefully describe to other people from from a player and a member standpoint is if you were almost waiting on the group in front of you, you are in position. So we try to relay that as often as we can. And the other thing that for people to understand is, again, like you have noted there, when you wait, you can never get that time back, and that time gets added on to every other group behind you. And I think that's a really important one for us to understand, but also other people, because you sit there and you wait for 30 seconds, or the group behind you waits for 30 seconds. You think, oh, they only waited for 30 seconds, they'll catch up. Well, we all know, watching this day in and day out as golf professionals and managers, and particularly when you're out there rangering, you never get that time back. At least it's really hard to. Mm-hmm. So those are really 2 points that we try to focus on and try to make people aware of. Just really being in position and understanding that, hey, like if you get behind, like it truly does affect things for the next several hours. And when people understand that, I think it makes a difference. I think they start to recognize, hey, like it's not just as simple as the group behind me waited for a minute or two, which would be an eternity out there.
Yeah, the data shows that most wait times happens on the tee box, right? And that's exactly it. But I think what you're talking to really well is the compounding of it. And if you're one of the later rounds in the day, now it's compounded 30, 40 minutes on, right? That is time that you can never get back. And it's also maybe time that you wanted to spend either finishing a round or in the grill after that, maybe now you can't, right? So there's an immediate experience detractor here. One, I'm having to wait on the course, but also my time is not being looked after as well as I would want to. And it's the same as flight delays or slow service at a restaurant or whatever. Like it pays so much and it pays it forward to really do this well and be accurate about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say 2 points that I would add that we've really learned over the past 5 years when we've taken that active approach of basically having someone on the golf course all day. 2 things. One, if you play in 3 hours and 45 minutes and you wait, you're dissatisfied and you feel like it was a very slow round. On the flip side, if you played and we just had an event where the golf course is set up unbelievably hard, it's going to take longer than 4 hours, but people don't wait and they play in 4.5 or 4:45. They think the pace is great. So we recognize that it really boils down to how often are they waiting, not necessarily how fast are they playing. And the other item that we've learned is our presence out there and our visibility is incredibly important. And I don't know what it is exactly in human nature, but when they see our team out there in a position to ranger and speak to people, there's an immediate comfort level that comes over people. And you know, again, back to the perception of playing fast, they just sort of feel like, hey, it's being taken care of, it's going to speed up. So those are really 2 important things that we've learned, and particularly the presence piece. You know, we really emphasize that within our team, that it's almost just as important to make contact with everyone on the golf course at some point throughout their round multiple times as it is to actually physically move people.
I think you're making a great point, and the contact that you're making for the most part will be positive, right? And it's really assisting and constructive and positive. It's not to tell anyone to get on with it. It's positive. And there's research that states that if a golfer has met somebody out on the course and they're feeling looked after, it adds a huge value to their round. It's just because I'm sure, and Garrett, you might second that, there's other things that you can do if you pay attention in terms of service, additional service, and so on. But if I can ask you, Garrett, here from what are the pace and flow management do's and don'ts that you've learned and that as part of your culture at Oakmont versus maybe how not to do it? What is important to you? So what are the things that you would never do when you aren't having conversations around getting people back in position?
Sure. I mean, I would never, flat out tell somebody, obviously, that they are slow. I would phrase it in a way that's positive and to kind of help them move along. Obviously right now when we're out there, I'm telling all the groups, I'll show them where they are on the map and say, hey, gentlemen, you're 5 minutes behind pace. We need to get everything moving along here so we can get it in for the other groups, make sure everybody finishes. And I think it's more of the tone, and I think it's just being positive. I mean, never be negative and tell them that they're slow. I think it's just the way you phrase it makes a huge difference to the group. And you're just out there helping them get caught back up, and I think that goes a long way with everybody. And just being visible, being there for them. And if they need anything, you're there.
And it probably helps you and gives you a lot of confidence to just have the information at hand, right? Rather than it being an opinion question. Sure.
Right. And I mean, yeah, when it's an opinion, I think guys can take it a little bit more personal, obviously. But, if you're showing them the data, they can't really say a whole lot to you. I mean, it's extremely helpful in those conversations.
Yeah. So setting expectations, you mentioned it, Devin, communication. Then if you have information and data, that really makes this an even playing field. Supportive approach, non-confrontational. You're out of position is a smart way of saying that you need to get moving a little bit without telling anyone they're slow. Sometimes I feel like being told you're slow as a golfer is like being told you've got a low IQ, right? So it's not something that people want to hear, so they fight it. Visibility, you mentioned that, and ultimately you're here to improve the experience. You're not here to police anyone, right? You're here to help and make sure that everybody gets the best possible round of golf played. So what's the impact on the club culture and the members? How are they taking to this? Is it a good investment for you in terms of your effort and how you go about it? Like, what's the membership saying about it, and how have they bought into it?
They've bought into it fully, and I think kind of having the perspective to be able to look back 5, 6, 7 years and see the evolution, and particularly as we've taken that more proactive approach. I guess a couple examples I look to. There are times of the day where we may not be out there all the time, and if there's a slow group, like, we get calls in the golf shop. So, but while that can be frustrating in the moment, it also tells me that we have people that are engaged in that culture, and it's important to them that pace is maintained. Typically, it's from the group behind that's waiting on the slow group, which is fine. But again, they've taken it into their own hands and understand that we're here to help. So overall, that's a very positive thing. And I guess another example I would give, just in terms of how people have owned the pace of play thing here, is I've had a couple instances where a member's bringing some guests out and they're concerned about the pace for the group. But it's awkward. It can be awkward for that person hosting the group, for a number of different reasons. And they've come to me and said, "Hey, can you help me? I think my group's going to be slow." From that point, we do is I say, "Hey, no problem. That's what we're here for." We'll remind the entire group on the tee, and we'll also tell them, "Hey, we're out there, and if you see our cart and we offer you a ride, please get in and take the ride. It means your group's out of position." So we kind of remove the member in that case from having to be the bad guy. And at the end of the day, no one's a bad guy, because we frame it like we're out there to help, and this is sort of our expectation with pace. But those two things, to me, demonstrate just how committed everyone here at the club is to pace of play.
Yeah, and I think your data confirms that. Let's talk about that and also your efficiency gains a little bit. So the data, firstly, this is a month worth of data in the Tag Marshal analytics dashboard. And it shows that your month has, where you target goal times 4 hours, you come in at 4:02, and that's busy June. So it really runs like clockwork. but it does take daily effort, right? And if you didn't do that, down here is a pie chart that looks at, or over here, number of rounds on pace, how many come within 10, 20, 30 minutes and so on. And it's really smooth flowing. And that really, it takes some effort, but I think the number of years that you've been at it now, it really is a very smooth process that you've got going. Do you use this data, or the system data comes out at all with your golf committee? Do they keep tabs on this in terms of your end of season? How did we do? Like, is it useful to you in terms of managing the club?
So it's useful to us. We look at a committee level from a, I'd call it a 10,000 foot level. Like, we really are focused on that average round time. And, as everyone knows that does this, if your average is that around that 4 hour mark, you're playing a lot of rounds under 4 hours, which is great. Really, one area that it has helped us significantly was our tee time intervals. And you guys were great with this. You pulled data on specific days that we asked, and what we really were trying to determine, we used to use 10-minute intervals throughout the day. And we wanted to know if we could go to 7 and 8 and 9-minute intervals early in the morning. And a lot of those times are filled with twosomes and threesomes. And the data showed us that. And we basically did a trial on 3 days of the week this year, Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday. And we'll actually move to those tee time intervals throughout the week for next year. So really, we gained tee times because we understood, hey, in this first hour of the day, here's our pace. It's 340. And we can easily, at that pace, get another tee time or two on the tee sheet. And even if there's a little waiting in that first hour on those fast groups, it's not going to affect us later in the day. So that was incredibly valuable to us to have that information.
That's fantastic, and that's something I'm very excited about, because ultimately that's what we're here for, right? We have to help you optimize and give you the tools so you can get the most out of your asset. So what Devin's talking about here is looking at dynamic goal times, which means let's not just apply one single goal time to the day, but stagger the goal time and our expectations on our day in line with what's actually possible. So you can see this median time up here on certain days at Oakmont. The start time for the day is 3:30, and then we've got 3:40, 3:50 for right into 9 o'clock, which is, there's quite a few tee times within that time frame. And this is when it was then possible to look at variable intervals and shorten things, because players are moving more quickly during those times. And that is fantastic that you freed up capacity. So for you, that means a few more members can get out. You can make a few more people happy, especially when it matters. And at a daily fee course, obviously that's direct revenue added, right? Because you're getting more out of your tee sheet. So it's the same principles. What it takes is communication. What it takes is you need to manage the space, because if you're going down that route and then there's mistakes being made, then it compounds, obviously. And it's great that you've had the confidence and really to look at the data and do it, and it's been so successful. Love to see that. Is anything else? Like over here, we've got what is called a track map, which is one of the things that Tag Marshal does. Like, every single round that gets played has got a map that gets stored, where you can show the players where they were at what time frame and how much time they took to get through. So this is obviously helpful if you need to have a conversation post round, or somebody comes and feels aggrieved. Are there any stories or any sort of moments where you thought it's really great that we're having this data and it's really helping us, that you can remember? Obviously, you were there from day one with you getting going on the system and making that decision.
Yeah, in terms of that track map, that's great, actually. We don't use it. We really don't use it with our members. I think that it would be extremely valuable if we had this technology 10 or 12 years ago, and we really first started to emphasize our speed of play. But now it's so ingrained in our culture, and I feel as though there's a level of trust from the members with our team, that they know that if we're out there, they know what we're looking at. They know we're not just out there harassing them. It's out there to help. And it really never gets to the point where you have to sit down and say, hey, like, actually, this is where you were slow. They know that if we're out there, then they're slow.
Yeah, I think culturally that is a huge difference, right? Because at many clubs that use traditional methods, the only leverage they have is force, basically, right? Saying, I will send you a letter, and then it's opinion versus opinion, and things escalate quickly. And it's fantastic that you've, over time now, it's year 4 with the system, your membership trusts you, and that you really take care of things. I think, this was brilliant. I've got one more little poll I want to just launch for our guests before we answer some Q&A questions, which just started to trickle in. So if you would like to ask Devin or Jarrett any questions, shoot please now in the Q&A section. And then we can try and answer those. Let me try a quick poll. Stop sharing. Okay, one poll. So one of the things, like, why would we invest in this, and is it going to be expensive? Well, the question is, if you had $500 to $1,000 a month, where else can you invest it to have a big impact? So the question we're asking here, well, what can you do with this? Where's it going to make the most difference at the club? Because $500 a month really isn't a lot. Even $1,000 really isn't a lot in the greater scheme of things. And where can you put it to get the most out for your members and guests? While this runs, let me switch over to some Q&As. Okay, here's a question. We are 80% walkers and 20% carts. How can we make Tag Marshal work in terms of both? Yes, absolutely you can. So you can install into carts and obviously do the walking groups like Oakmont have done. Here's a question by Mike Stevenson. How do you get the Tag Marshal onto groups that are walking without caddies? Is that something that ever happens, or is it compulsory caddies at Oakmont?
So any group that we're tracking has caddies in the group. I guess to be more clear, there's really no group going out before 4 o'clock without a caddy. So it's kind of a non-factor here.
I think there are many clubs that do not have compulsory caddy programs that do walking golf. And in this case, how we advise they do it, normally they clip it onto one player's bag. They might call him the pace captain for the round. And then there is a geofence that triggers at the end of the round. And we've got many clubs in Ireland that do it like that, where there's a little box where the tag then gets deposited. So if you don't have a big staffing contingent, it can run itself like that. And obviously, if you've got any carts, if it's installed in the carts, nobody needs to do anything. It all does itself automatically. Let me see if I can find another question. Okay, there's some questions in the chat as well. Jeffrey Patrick is asking, we are predominantly cart club only. How would you integrate this into a member's privately owned cart? What's the cart situation down at Seminole, Devin? Just out of interest, not to answer this question. I just would like to know.
So no carts, all walking with caddy.
Okay. Yeah, so then maybe to answer the question, we have multiple tech options, and some are really lightweight. And those can be installed into a member's private cart, just so the club management has got line of sight of anything that goes out on the course at all times. And Sometimes the club may decide that they only want to see those cards when they're in play, when they enter the course, and other times they're saying, well, it's helpful to know where people are at all times. There is another question that has come in. So normally the private cards wouldn't go for screens. Sometimes they do, but normally it's a hidden away tracker that gets installed. We've even had police recoveries of stolen cards happening in Texas. Where else? And the cart ended up 600 miles north and was then later recovered by the police because they could track where it had gone. 3 or 4 of them got stolen at Golf Club of Louisiana. A committee-driven club wanted to use Tag Marshal. It's quite challenging to get everyone on board, although it's a no-brainer for the operations and management team who are on board. Any advice? How do I get this over the line with the committee? Like, I'm not sure what might be the barriers. Like what we've seen before as well. We don't want Big Brother. We don't have a pace of play problem. Those are the sort of things that may come through. I don't know if you remember, and clearly, Devin, at Oakmont, this was a decision that was well considered and already something that you'd paid attention to. But were there any barriers that you needed to overcome to say, okay, this year we're really going to try and we're going to use technology, and it's time now? We've tried the traditional way.
So for us to introduce the technology, there really wasn't. I think the ball was put more in our court and said, hey, like, how do we take this to the next level? And one of our suggestions was to utilize the technology. It's tough though. I mean, look, we all face that with different things at our clubs or anywhere. I mean, when I can remember when we first started sort of the pace of play initiative, I mean, it's hard. It changes hard at these places. And it just takes time and it takes education. Look, for us with Tag Marshal, we said, let's try it. Right. And if it weren't beneficial to us and we didn't feel like we needed it, we wouldn't be using it for, I think, our 4th or 5th year. So it was a pretty easy sell at the committee level in terms of suggestions to get it over the top. I mean, I really don't have any magic words of advice other than, you know, like we said, look, we're going to try this for a season. And if we see benefit, we'll continue to do it.
Thanks, Devin. Bill, not to throw you in the deep end, but you've had a story happen at Baltusrol a while ago where there was another club's president playing, and then he played with a pro, and then they checked in at the halfway house on the live screen. And then he asked, what is that? How does it work? Bill,
Yeah.
And then what happened?
He went back to the club and they became a partner.
Mm-hmm. So just having seen it in action, right, and having seeing that to him, it must have seemed it's a no-brainer, right? As
a player, having the interface and seeing the system, he went straight away back to the club, met with the committee, and we don't need to talk about who the specific club was, but that was a pretty easy sell once he had an interface with the system.
Yeah, that's so yeah. What we always encourage is just if you're interested in exploring this, come chat to us, and we can also put you in touch with a few clubs that are using it and how they got things across the line. And it's becoming easier for sure. Like in the 6-7 years that we've been doing this now, conversations are getting much smoother, and turnaround times at the clubs are much quicker because they are starting to turn to technology, and also they are looking at ways of using data to make better decisions, like more as an operational guideline, if you will. It's just going with the times, I guess. But enough about us. Devin and Garrett, thank you so much for your time. I want us to stay on pace. We're now on 50 minutes, where we promised 45, but obviously we wanted to answer some questions. Thank you, and yeah, we really appreciate it. That was fantastic. Thanks for the great insight. When can we marvel at Oakmont for the next major? Have you got a date for the next one?
Yeah, so I think we have dates now for the next 10, but our the one that's going to be coming up the soonest will be the 2025 US Open. So we're really looking forward to that. Might see in typical fashion with Oakmont, you know, might be a couple new things with the golf course. So we can't wait. Yeah.
Nice. That's also a fantastic reward for the team to be part of something like this. So
Yeah,
very
sure
excited
is.
for you. Yeah, very excited for you. And yeah, it happens quickly, you know. Also the
Yeah.
planning. What's the USGA cycle? When do they start the on-site inspections, planning, making plans?
Yeah, so for a US Open, we'll have 2 to 3 USGA staffers on site here at Oakmont 2 years in advance. You know, a lot of people on this call have hosted major championships, particularly US Opens, know how much goes into it just logistically outside the ropes, and really that's what their focus is in that 2-year time frame. So yeah, they've got a team here, and they'll be working closely with the club and all the local municipalities, really starting in 23.
And that is very soon now.
It is. Be here
Because
before we know it.
Tomorrow we're going to wake up and it's 2022, and then
Yeah.
next year from there on, right?
Exactly.
Okay, gents, really thank you again. Yeah, also thanks everyone for the great questions. We can't get to all of them. I'm going to try and answer now as we log off, because Devin and Garrett have got members to attend to. Are we going to see you guys at the PGA show? Are you planning to come down? Or
Yeah, we're planning on it right now. We hope to. We don't know what it's going to look like sort of post-COVID, but the plan is to be down there. I think the break from the PGA show, I think a lot of everyone was I think it was a good break, but I think there's a lot of excitement to kind of get back and just reconnect with people.
Yeah, the distance making the heart fonder, right? It's time to shake hands again and have some drinks together, and for sure. So we're excited about it. So we're looking forward to seeing you down there. Okay, that's it. Goodbye. Thank you. And
Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Bodo. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Take care.